I knew the area I wanted it to be in, and I picked the perfect tree, and I set the tree stand first so that I could have a sitting shooting spot
Mhm.
right at the hole, because I know they're going to come to the hole. If it's in a 60-yard area wherever I put the hole, they're going to come to it regardless.
Follow the trail. Ready to shoot. If you know where a deer's bedding and you know where he's eating, that deer should be dead.
If you're passive on a deer, what you're doing is you're teaching them.
I've got 30 bucks in the Michigan record book. Everyone but one has had at least one previous wound on his body. Some had as many as 4.
The Exodus Podcast,
your source for all things whitetail.
All right, welcome, Grant Oldenburg. Didn't stumble on that one. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. How about you?
Good. So I'm really excited about this conversation because it is June, it's hot, and everyone is getting ready to, they're working on their food plots, whether they're spraying them or doing all these other things. But there's something that I think gets overlooked often, and we're talking all about it here today, which is water holes. But before we get into that, take a chance to introduce yourself and anything that people should know about you.
Yeah. So currently live in Northern Illinois, where I do a lot of stuff the outdoors, but I grew up in Southern Wisconsin. I grew up just doing anything and everything, sports, anything outdoors, was fishing, hunting, but big into sports. And the outdoor world, it was fun, and hunting was, but it was just gun hunting, right? It was the Wisconsin tradition. You're gun hunting. Grew up, my dad didn't care about doing anything other than he went to the same tree stand. He got into it. He threw on a pair of Carhartts, and he hung out his orange jacket the day before, and all he wanted was meat, right? He just wanted the sausage. If a good buck went by, he'd take it. So, I learned the basics of hunting, and but there wasn't a lot of details in it, right? So grew up doing everything outdoors. When I went to school for engineering in Wisconsin at Wisconsin Platteville. Got a job at school with Hormel Foods, where I work in the food industry right now, and had several promotions through that. Where we were in Minnesota for a few years, got really into dog training there, and when I got my first dog there, so loved doing stuff outdoors with him. And I was started bow hunting right the first year I got out of college. I just didn't have time going up to bow hunt, I had so many things going on. Played sports in college, so it's like. It finally had time to do it, learn to bow hunt.
What was your
right
sport of choice?
I played baseball in college. So,
okay.
But I mean, I don't know. I liked doing everything. Water skiing, you name it, anything outdoors, really.
Uh-huh.
But so I was up in Minnesota for 4 years. We tried hunting on some public ground there. Didn't really, I was carrying in a ground blind and just, didn't really know. I trying to shoot deer, and it wasn't always working out well. And finally ended up shooting one. I think it was 2016. I shot my first deer with a bow. And then we got promotion to move to the suburbs of Chicago, which was closer to family. And the whole reason I was able to talk my wife into going to all these different areas with me is that the goal is to get back to where we're at right now, which is in Northern Illinois. And we have a location where an operation where we are like 30 minutes from my family and 10 minutes from her family.
Oh, nice.
And my wife's family owns 260 acres on the Rock River.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I stumbled into that one. I had no idea or even what. I just knew that they lived in the country and really liked their daughter. And then it turns out they had some of the best deer hunting property that you could ever imagine. There's trails cut all through this property, big open areas. I just spent Sunday mowing for 8 hours, and my brother-in-law was mowing for 8 hours, and we didn't mow all the trails and areas that we mow with a zero turn mower down in there. So it's a beautiful property. It's strung out a mile along the river.
Wow.
And so I got really lucky in that aspect of it. And only my brother-in-law hunts it a little bit. So there's a few neighbors that used to hunt and whatnot. But so I lucked into that one, and we're close to family. Got 2 little kids, 1 and 2.5. So they get to go hang out with, they get to go hang out with grandma and grandpa, and I get to go out in the woods and go hunting. So it's kind of worked out pretty nice being this close to everything.
Yeah. How much of it was it a change of pace from hunting, carrying in ground blinds to public ground in Minnesota to hunting a really special farm from the sounds of it? It has to be just completely different.
I still, like when I first started hunting, I think the first year I hunted that would have been in 2018. And I still didn't know, just again, basic gun hunting tactics. I wasn't really worried about the wind that much. I threw up a couple ladder stands out there based on some cameras. I didn't really know what they were telling me. And I struggled that first year. It's a big wood settings. When I say 260 acres, only 10 of it's tillable. The rest of it's all river bottom ground, hardwoods, thick brush. So sure, I'd see deer, but I wasn't anywhere in the range to kill them, right, with a bow. So it took it was a big change there. And then I just went full into everything, like YouTube, podcasts, right? That was, Wired to Hunt was really coming out around that time, and picking up a lot of steam, just podcasts in general, right? And as I'm just searching for podcasts in general, I find you guys and a number of other ones. And then I feel like in the last couple of years, it's exploded even more, where everybody's got a YouTube channel. Yeah. Everyone's got a podcast, and it's just the amount of information you can take in is endless. Yeah. And I have this thing wherever when I'm doing, I just go full into it. Right. So when I was training dogs, I was full into it. Right. And I reached a point where I was like, okay, I felt good with what I'd accomplished. And then we moved to an area where there wasn't a lot of people bird hunting and training dogs. So now I can go deer hunting by myself and do all the work by myself. So I just went full into deer hunting. Right. So don't get me wrong, where I hunt provides me opportunity to shoot great deer and have great hunting opportunity. And without that, I'm not sure I'd even be where, I don't know if I'd be just interested in it if I didn't have that property either. Just an incredible change. And I just, went down all kinds of rabbit holes, from cameras to now I'm saddle hunting, and now we're going to talk about water holes, and I'm learning food plots, and now it's getting into conservation and managing the land, and we're putting switchgrass in areas, and I planted apple trees this year. So it just kind of has evolved into a lot of different things, or it's just a lot of fun and being around the property. So yeah, I think back and look at that, Jake, when you talked about public land hunting and what I know now, do I think I would have shot big deer or anything? No, but I probably would have shot a deer.
Oh
right?
yeah,
I probably could have shot a deer, right, where I didn't shoot one there before. Yeah. So yeah, I just look back at that and just shake my head, but it's all part of the process.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to start somewhere. How long has this process been from really going from pretty green, I guess, I will just say old school hunting tactics to very modern strategy? Is this like a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year?
4 seasons. Yeah. Right. And I don't want to say somebody starting new is because I had, 12 to, well, I don't know what it is. I was 28, 27 years old, something like that, of messing up deer hunts. Right. And learning.
Wasting time, blowing stuff up before we even know it.
But having experience with it, right? Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if the learning curve's that different, but you can learn a lot in those few years. But and the other side of that was I'm doing a lot of hunting now that I live here, or that we live closer, right? And I'm doing a lot of hiking through the woods. I'm doing scouting. I'm out there this winter. I was out there. I was testing out some gear because I'm going on an elk hunt this fall in Montana. So I was testing out some new gear that I got, and it's 0 degrees out, and I'm out hiking in the dark with my dog, and we're looking for deer sign, and it's December, January, right? We're just doing those type of things and looking at deer. So there's a lot that I did extra during that time. So I just dove straight into it, but really the evolution has been these last 4 seasons. But again, a lot of it has to do with some of the premium ground that I'm able to hunt as well.
Well, yeah, a little bit more fun playground with a few more gizmos and gadgets on it. But I think that brings, with the way the farm lays out in terms of really only 10 acres tillable, which means there isn't a ton of row crop tillable ground. And there might be some in the area, but just for the sake of the actual dirt you're hunting, there's not necessarily that big giant destination food source. I imagine that 10 acres probably gets pounded just by the deer in the river bottom, or no?
Oh yeah. Farmers used to have crops on it. And there wasn't much left. I planted 3 acres of corn this last year out there. And December 9th, I drove my Ranger through there to see what was left. There wasn't a kernel on the ground. But I think a lot of it had to do with raccoons too. I think they were munching down a lot of it. But there was nothing left. It was gone. I was like, well, this doesn't do me any good as a late season food source, because 3 acres of corn was completely gone. Yeah. And so and the way that it kind of lays out is on one side of our property, we have about 1,000 acres of hardwoods, a few houses in there, and the other side's a 600-acre chunk. So you just have this.
Too. So it really woods, is. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a premium spot in the river where there's not a lot of development. One side's a Girl Scout camp, and so it's it's just there's this opportunity for them to get big and get old without
A strong age class. Yeah.
yeah, without even trying, without people passing deer, just them eluding humans for that long.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. And I think how did you go down the evolution of water holes? Like what made you get your shovel and a big old
Yeah.
plastic tote and say, this is, I'm
Yeah.
interested to try this.
So there was some guys that had hunted out there previously, and they had dug in a water hole. And I don't know what led it to them, because I mean, this was before I don't know where it came from really, but
Yeah.
they had the notion to do it because we're on the river, right? And
Which
they
is
had a
a
couple.
funny, a funny point. Yeah.
And we can get to that and what that looks like. But I mean, they had a failed one where they tried to dig it in the ground and put a tarp in, and then but what they really did well was they bought these old fish tanks, or I mean fish ponds,
Yeah.
right? And they're 250 gallon, or I don't know if they're 250 or 300 gallon fish ponds that someone would see in their backyard, and they went and dug those in, and they were very protective of that area when I first started hunting there. They didn't want anybody around there. They didn't want my cameras over there. But quickly we got that straightened out, that they weren't really in charge of the property. They couldn't tell me where I could hunt and put my cameras at. And then I started learning why they wanted me to not be around there. I started getting pictures of big deer. And then there was a second one that another guy had dug out there. I didn't know how to hunt them. I didn't really understand. Just because they were there didn't mean that, hey, I walked up, sat down, and shot a big one, right? So there was still a lot to learn from that. But just seeing the activity and being able to pattern deer coming to those water holes, like that's where I learned it from. So I can't take any credit for doing anything special other than just picking up what somebody else had already put down. So
You had two on there. How many did you replace those since then? Because I know, like the hole and tarp probably isn't the best method. Would you agree with that?
yeah, that one failed. We ripped that out last summer. It sat empty the whole time I'd hunted there, so we ripped it out with grapple bucket and skid steer and filled it back in. I think the deer are gonna walk in them, and they punched holes in them. And I know I've seen people use all kinds of different methods, and they may work. The two things I don't like about that is, one, they can put holes in it. Two, if you're obviously, they can dry up if you're not using a tarp. And then three, you have that risk of having EHD spread by having a water hole with dirt around it and stuff. So we'd rip that one out. But the fish ponds they're a plastic, I don't know, they're heavy duty plastic
Yeah.
tub. Those are still sitting in the ground, and until they start leaking, I mean, they just leave them there because they're already nice and dug in. But since then, last year I did add one more in a location. I had another one a few weeks ago, actually. So I just, the one I added actually last year, I had put up a fiberglass box blind. I'd built a platform and put a fiberglass box blind up there in a transition area, probably like one of the only transition areas on the farm that you can say really pinches down. There's really no pinch points, but this is about 100 yards wide, and then there's a nice little open area where I was able to, in a road that you can have access to get in and out. And I put a blind there. I just wasn't getting them close enough to the blind, like I'd see them, or it was just tough to really get them to want to travel to one right by the blind to get a shot. And so I was like, this place needs a water hole. But it took me a long time to decide like how to position and where to be at with winds and terrain. One of the things is with that is that you don't want to put a water hole necessarily that is where deer can't see what's going on, what's coming at them, right? You don't want to put it down in a low spot. You don't want to put it up where there's a big drop off the other side of it on like on a high point, right? They want to be able to have a field of view when they're coming to these, so they feel comfortable drinking at it. So it took a little bit to kind of figure out how I want to do that, how I could put it in a location, get water to it if I need to refill it, or just fill it in general. Once I was able to put that in, they were hitting it immediately. I just put one in
instant.
I mean, like within a couple days, like a day or two, right? Yeah. So the one I put in a couple weeks ago, I was just out there, and where I had all this dug up dirt around there, I sprinkled a little bit of clover around there just to try to
get them
make sure. Well, that, and just so it try to make it look more natural by the time fall comes around, so it's not this big, dirt pile around there. And then also, Yeah, and mud hole around the two, same thing, right? When you're talking EHD purposes, things like that, something to absorb some of that moisture in there. And they had already, there was tracks all the way around that pond, so I know they had been using it. So yeah, so I mean, it doesn't take them long to figure that out for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. And so you talk a little bit about, taking the time to really think about where to place these water holes. So someone's listening right now and they're probably thinking of a place or two on farms that they hunt of like, man, maybe I need to put a water hole there. This seems to be effective. What are some things that people need to know before they grab a shovel?
First of all, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience in swampy grounds like that. I had some buddies that have swamp areas. I'd like to see what they could do with that, and if that would help them um, move deer activity to a certain area.
Spot.
But
Yep.
I'm not sure. I mean, what I do notice with a lot of time is when there is a lot of rain, that they're getting their water intake elsewhere, whether that's puddles or they're getting it from the plants that they're eating. I'll see activity slow way down on the water holes. If I'm talking inches of rain here, there, a couple inches here, or you get those couple weeks where it's raining every other day, activity will drop drastically. It fill up your water hole, which is nice, but um, so in a swamp area, I don't know how well it's going to help you. Where the location I'm looking at and looking for after having some experience and putting these in now is it. First off, you got to have good access to it, right? Because you can burn out a water hole just as fast as you can burn out a food plot.
Hmm.
So the key is, all right, what's your access in and out of that? What's your cover walking in and out of there? And then next, I'm looking at wind, right? Where's my wind gonna blow? Where can I place that? But I think I guess to take a step back, because if we're gonna look at like a location, right? We're planning a specific location. If we talk about an area I'm looking at is going to be where do I want to congregate deer at? But they need to already kind of be in that area, right? You want to put a water hole in the middle of a food plot. Will they come check it out? Sure. Are you going to get a buck cruising in the middle of the day or in the middle of the rut coming in to check that water hole out? Probably not. They're probably going to visit just as likely as they do a regular food plot. So you're already attracting them there with food. It doesn't really do you any good to put a water hole there. And so I see people doing that, and I just, sure, deer are going to drink out of it and you may get a shot on one, but I think you're losing the effectiveness of it.
Hmm.
So really you're looking for a location that's near bedding, right? That you can catch them coming out of the bed to take a drink or going on the way back to bedding to get a drink. Transition points, right? Where maybe you have this funnel area where deer are going to be coming. They already come through there, but you want to stop them to get a drink, and to get a clear shot in them. And maybe there's 2 or 3 trails they can take through this transition point. You want to funnel them to there to stop to get a drink. On tops of ridges, if you have some ground that's going to go, have some ups and downs to it, where they may be bedding on the sides of the ridges. It's a great way to kind of get them off the sides of those ridges or out of those valleys to get them up there and get a drink. We've had some good success with that. So I would say those are the areas somewhere between, right, where they're going to be bedding at and where they're going to be going towards maybe a food source, or where are they going to be traveling to? How do you
Kind of
suck them into there?
defining the transition zone, or where they're going from bed to food in the morning or evening, or vice versa. Is if you had to summarize it, would you say that?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to put it for sure.
Yeah.
So once you have that kind of picked out, and I'll say this too, if you have a creek running through your property or a river like we do,
Yeah.
so I have the stand where I killed 2 bucks this year on the water hole. That water hole sits 100 yards from the river.
That's awesome.
And
yeah, that's cool.
yeah, and I think a lot of what that has to do with is just those deer being comfortable, right? That buck, does he want to go down that riverbank, or does he want to make himself vulnerable? And is it
Mhm.
in an area where he's going a lot, or does he have to go out his way to get that water? Right, you're making it easier for them to stop and get a drink. So I think if you have a creek running through your property, you might say, well, we already use a creek. Okay, well, they can get a drink anywhere in that creek. So it doesn't help you for setting up a stand, but if you can get a little bit further off the creek or another area where they're coming through and you can get them to stop them, that would be a good location. If you have a piece of property that is super dry and there's no water around you for 500 yards, I mean, this is a slam dunk for you. I would, like, if you're worried about putting in a 5 acre, not a 5 acre, if you're talking about like a 1/4 acre food plot that you're trying to put in, I
Yeah.
wouldn't even mess with that. You put a water hole in something like that, and you're going to attract deer from everywhere to that point.
Yeah, and define it. And so I mean, beyond amplifying a bow stand, because that's kind of sounds like what the core goal of it is. I mean, in terms of inventory, it has to be powerful as too.
Oh,
What have you seen?
so when it comes to inventory, that's a great point. One, you're gonna get great pictures, like whether it's summer, middle of the night pictures where you get deer wandering through. You're gonna get. I mean, I'll get pictures of deer that I've never seen before. Now I'll never catch them on any other camera, but I'll get them there. And something that I noticed, and I picked this up. I know you guys have talked about this on Trail Cam Radio, and I don't know if I've heard it other places too, but is also it all kind of runs together when you listen to Nothing
Yeah.
But Deer podcasts.
Yep.
But is that being able to use historical trail cam data
Mhm.
to inventory your deer and predict what's going to happen the next year, right? So I noticed this with a buck a couple years ago. He eluded me several times, and I was still trying to learn. But what I found was that he was frequenting. I started tracking this stuff in Excel and putting in all daylight photos of any shooter buck, right? Which is different to everybody, but a shooter buck is something that gets me excited. And I would
Mhm.
put it any daylight photo where it was at, try to track wind down it, and just trying to see like what patterns I could find from as much as I could learn. And what I found out looking back on it the following year was that there was exactly what you guys were talking about, is that there would be times where deer were doing the exact same thing the following year. So this past year, I really put the test. We had this really good 4-year-old buck, and his name was he was a future booner the year before, right? And the
Mhm.
neighbors ended up shooting him right in. They said that right in the shoulder, but the trail camera pic that we had of him after they shot him ended up being the ass shoulder.
Mhm.
So they
Ah,
shot it
jeez.
right. Yeah, so they
Got
shot it right in
backwards.
the yeah, a little wrong one. But
Yeah.
so we were worried that deer wasn't gonna make it, but he ended up making it through. And I had some great data on him, and I said, I'm gonna put this to the test. I actually was able for that's last summer. It was really dry. If you remember, I mean, how dry it was last summer and in
Yeah.
August, September leading into the
Bone dry.
season. I mean, these deer, and he was coming this waterhole every single night, and I could kind of tell where he was coming from. And I found his sheds the year before, so I kind of knew the area. I mean, we're talking big woods and ridges. He could be anywhere, but I kind of knew where he was at. I was just waiting for the wind to be right on it. And but they were coming to this waterhole every single night. They were drinking 250 gallons in 2 weeks. The
Wow.
coons, turkeys, squirrels in there. I mean, they were just crushing it. And
Yeah.
then we ended up getting rain like right before season started, so it's kind of slowed down from there. I couldn't really use that to help me, but I could figure out where he was kind of coming from. And so I ended up being I'd shot a buck already on the 16th of October, so I had to tag left, and I was holding it for this deer. And I
And
went
that was
back
over a
into,
water hole too, right?
yeah, that was also over waterhole. That was a Wednesday night at 6:30, and my goal is to shoot a buck during the October lull, so to
Yep.
speak. And
That's
he came
smack
in a
dab in the
water
middle of it.
hole, and yeah, he came to a water hole, an hour or so before dark, maybe a little bit less than that. And yeah, I was able to shoot him as head into the water. I was
Uh-huh.
able to open up a window on my it happened to be in my fiberglass blind and shoot him.
Uh-huh.
So I had one down already. I just heard a podcast where Andy May was talking about scouting his way in. I don't know if he just shot a good buck or not. And, or maybe it was an Instagram post of his, but I was like, all right, I'm going to scout my way in, find some sign. It's October 22nd now. I stopped at home, had to let the dog out. So that kind of plays into this a little bit. And then I'm scouting my way in, kind of back tracing away from the water hole, looking for sign on where he might be. And I get to a point, and it looked pretty good. They could tell they were eating acorns in there, and there was a few scrapes around there. And I get halfway up the tree, and I hear something coming out. It's really thick. There's Tatarian honeysuckle in there, and I have my saddle on an area I've never been, never hung, and out here he steps at about 15 yards, and I'm halfway up the tree, platform on my back, my bow's on the ground, and I can't do anything, right? So he circles around me, and so he gets away. So I was like, all right.
Did you get busted pretty
I
bad?
No, he didn't really. He knew something was up, but the wind, it was just edge wind enough. I mean, he was 5 yards from my tree at one point, and
Mhm.
he saw me as soon as he stepped out, but he couldn't make out what I was, and I was just frozen. I mean, 1 foot on each step, just like muscles burning, for the
Yeah.
3 minutes that he stood there. But he knew something wasn't quite right, and he tried to walk away. And in hindsight, I should have probably I should have learned there. I should have dropped down and grabbed my bow after he kind of made his way away from the tree versus I made my way up the rest of the way and brought my bow up and he never came back. But I should have learned at that point that it would have been much faster and maybe more effective to go down to the ground.
Mhm.
So I didn't get a shot of him there. But then I said, okay, October 27th, the year before, he was at this another water hole in the ridge, a different one from where he was hitting it all summer long at 5 o'clock at night. And so I couldn't make it that night where I had some work stuff going on. And the wind there it was a marginal, I could have made it work, but from where I thought he was coming from, it would have been hit or miss, right? I could have got busted or it could have been a slam dunk.
Mhm.
So I told my buddy, I said, hey, if you want to try it, and my buddy that hunts up there, I said, he's going to be at this water hole tonight. Like, I'm pretty positive of this. Well, sure as shit, he shows up 10 minutes later than the year before.
Wow.
10:27,
Crazy.
10 minutes later. So I said, okay, like, I have more pictures of him on water holes in daylight coming up here.
He's going to die. Yeah.
He's going to die. So the next time is November 3rd. Okay. And that's like kickoff to my rutcation. I said, okay, I'm going to be in the stand. Like, I'm off that day. I know where he's coming. The wind is perfect. The wind for this water hole is perfect. So all of a sudden it was like the first morning of like cold weather. And we have a cabin in Wisconsin. And I get a message on my phone saying that the heat isn't working up there, that the furnace isn't working. And I'm like, oh, man, like, I'm kind of doubting I know he's going to be there, but I'm kind of doubting at the same time. Like, it can't be. Like if I could hunt, he'd be there, but I need to go up, take care of business. I got all week to hunt. Like, I'll still get him. I have confidence I can still get him.
And on November 3rd, you had him the year before?
Yeah, on camera, right? So I knew this was the date. So
yeah.
So I go to the cabin. Yeah. Well, and I tell my buddy, I was like, he's a police officer, and I said, all right, I know you got to work tonight, but you just watch. And I got a cell camera on that water hole, and I said the cell camera's going to go off, and I told him the time. I'm at the cabin, and I'm getting ready to come home, and my phone starts blowing up, and I see the scout tech there, and I see all these texts from him, and I'm like, he showed up.
Yep.
Sure shit. Within, I'm maybe 15 minutes of the year previous, he's there November 3rd. Okay. The whole way home, I am kicking myself, and I am like, why am I responsible?
And you would have had an okay wind to hunt that,
no,
right?
This wind was perfect. This wind was dynamite. Like from where he came from, I mean, a 20-yard shot, his head in the hole, he would have been done.
Yeah.
All right. And the buck, he probably goes 160. He was a great deer. And so I'm like, okay, I messed up. November 6th, I got him coming in again, and it's 4:30 in the afternoon. All right, so I'm hunting in the around the area where I think he's at the next few days. I know November 6th, I got a crack at him. So the night before, I hung my stuff, and it's not a great wind for the stand. I couldn't use the preset stand that was there. I had to use my mobile setup, which I use a saddle, and I climbed up, and I was able to get in a stand. And I set up the night before, and I hunted there, and I had some great activity. A nice young 3-year-old come in, and I was like, okay, he didn't. I was just there just in case, right? In case he was a night early, I was going to be there. So I left all my stuff in the tree, minus my bow, all ready to go. I'm going to come back tomorrow night. As I alluded to earlier, I got little kids at home, and I'd been hunting hard. The
guilt's rolling
the last couple of days, and it's like I don't know. I think it was a Friday or Saturday, or whatever. And my little boy at the time, I mean, he was, I don't know, probably 7-8 months old, and he's not sleeping. And he's up all night long, and he's up early, and I'm leaving. When I get up early to go hunting, he's waking up. So now my wife's waking up, and then she's up today because now my daughter's up, right? So I'm like, all right, I'll stay. I'm going to shoot him tonight, the 6th, right? I'll stay home today. I'll take care of Luke. I will take care of all the fall chores around the house, clean up leaves, put away flower pots. Gonna make the wife happy because I'm gonna be able to get him tonight. It'll be a great day. I take care of that stuff, and I think I've given myself plenty of time. Something that I started this year that I think really helped me was I take one shot before I go in. I carry a block target in my truck, and I take one practice shot, and I limit myself to one. Put some pressure on a little bit. Take that practice shot, and maybe once all year, I felt like super confident going in, right? Because I hit where I wanted to. It just gives you the extra confidence. And then also, I just didn't have time. You spend that time hunting rather than practicing shooting. So it gives you that opportunity
Get a
to
rep in at least.
practice.
Yep.
Yeah. So I take my shot. I have a great access into this, and I'm going in. My stuff's already there. I'm an hour early at probably like an hour and a half early here, and which it might sound like it's cutting into. It probably was cutting it too close, but I'm trying to take care of stuff at home, and because he's been to the minute, right? So I know he's going to come there.
Right.
So I get halfway up the tree, and I hear shit just busting and breaking in a spot where I didn't expect a deer to come from, and here he is. I'm halfway up the tree, bow on the ground, 1 foot on each step again, same position. And I'm like, you've got to be shitting me. I've never been caught going up a tree by a deer, and this deer just caught me twice.
Twice in a week, basically.
So
Maybe a little over.
so he's there an hour early. It was an hour early this time. And I was like, oh, man, he makes his way in. I'm halfway up the tree. He wanted that water hole bad. His tongue is hanging out. He snaked around. I was able to get all the way up the tree because all my stuff was set and pull my bow up. And he started coming back to me. Like, he knew something wasn't right again, but he was walking up this 4-wheeler trail, and I'm like, holy shit, this is still going to work. Like, this time it's going to work. But he's smarter than that, right? So he gets to a point where, like, I was going to wait till he got to the water hole to shoot, wait till he got comfortable. And he got, like, where he was at, I could have shot him if he didn't know I was there, right? But I'm not taking that chance. So he busts out of there. And the more I think about it, I'm like, what is going on? And I think back that the time change the previous year had already occurred, and I hadn't reset that camera. So fall back an hour. He'd actually been there at 3:30, not 4:30.
Yeah.
So he showed up on the money. Right on time.
Gosh, that's hilarious.
Johnny on the spot.
That's
so
hilarious.
Yeah. So so that was 3 times where I was able to use that historical data to get that information. So now I've burned up a ton of time on this deer hunting the area. I don't have the data I have after this is all after he got shot by the neighbor. So I'm not trusting it, because there was times where he was like laying next to a water hole the year before, and I just knew that he's hurt. Like, he's like, it's just so I can't trust any of that data, right? So I'm like, all right, I'm going there. We had another big deer run around, and that I'd gotten on this another water hole, right, where I'd shot my first buck early this year, where that fiberglass blind is, and he'd been frequenting it. As I'm still trying to chase the buck it caught me up the tree twice, I'm getting my cell cams dinging 100 yards away from the water hole in front of the fiberglass blind, and I was like, I got to go get this. I got to go after this deer. This deer's bigger. It's probably older. And I just didn't have the confidence that I had going after, the other one, because he had just shown up this year. I didn't have any previous data on him, but I was going to go after him. And he had been to that water hole in the middle of summer, middle of the night. I'd rode him off. And then if it began the season, first couple of days of the season, he was there like 3 days in a row. So that's where I put a cell. Had a camera already, and I put a cell camera where I thought he was coming and going from to a bedding area. And up where I was catching him in late November, where it started going off. So I'm hunting that area, and it was November 9th, and that should be a premium day. To me, the 7th through the 10th is as good as they get, especially where we're at there. And the 9th was a terrible day. He'd been at this location the 7th and 8th. The 9th shows up, no deer. Like, I don't even think I saw a deer that day. And I had hunted this all day long in the spot. Like, I don't even know how it's possible on November 9th. So the 10th, I say, all right, I'm going back to that spot, and I go in there with my saddle set up, and I saw a deer that, I've shot. There's a big deer behind me that it's a booner, and so I know what that size is. And this deer was 100% that. Never had seen it before. Had it showed up, and I couldn't get a shot on it because it was kind of thick in there. So seen plenty of other deer around there. I got down. I was going to go trim out where I'd seen a lot of these deer hitting. It turns out I walk over there's a scrape over there. I'm like, okay, that makes sense why they're hitting over there. So I set up this tree and do some trimming, and it had been cool that morning. So I'm just like in all my gear, and for whatever reason, I didn't decide not to take my bibs off, and I'm just sweating my ass off. And I decided that all right, for lunch, I'm going to go sit in my box blind. I'm going to get all this gear off because I'm sweating and it's on the water hole, right? So I'm looking for some midday activity, and then I'll come back here in the evening where I've been seeing this buck, and we'll see if we can get a shot at him. So I get up in the ground blind or up in my box blind, and I just strip down. I got all my clothes except for I got a t-shirt and underwear on, and I send a Snapchat to or a picture to my buddy, and I say, I'm hanging out here. This would be funny if a deer walks up right now,
Yep.
Well, sure shit, here comes this buck that we call Mega, and the one that had been showing up in the area, and I'm in my underwear, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm just gonna shoot him, right? So there's no time, and I guess it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I
had your loincloth on, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, going back to the roots, that's for sure.
Right.
So I'd been busted by a doe out of that blind a few weeks prior to that. I shot my buck right out of the same blind October 16th. A few weeks after that, or maybe a week after that, I guess, I was going to shoot a doe. And she'd caught me opening my window trying to shoot her. So I was feeling pretty good after I shot that buck. And so after getting busted by that doe, I wanted to make sure that when Mega comes walking up, that when he crossed in front of a tree, that I open the window. So he goes behind this big oak, and I slide the window open, and I'm clipped in, I'm ready to go. And he stops, and I'm like, he looks, I'm like, shit, my white legs are glowing in that box blind, and I'm like, I just messed this up. It's 10:30 in the morning. He's cruising through to get a drink. I just messed this up. And for whatever reason, he turned his head back to the water hole. He walked to it. And I remember sitting there right before that thinking, like, man, I should have been over here filling these water holes. There's like an inch in there, maybe it's full of leaves. Like there's not even any water in there. Like I was feeling not as confident in that spot. But he came right up to it, and he stuck his head in there and started drinking. And when he stuck his head in there, I was able to get a shot on him. And he ended up mule kicking right over the water hole. And I got a camera shot of a mule kicking right over the water hole. It's pretty cool. And, I ended up finding him. I end up having to call in a dog to track him. So that's a whole nother story. I shoot a really heavy arrow. I have no trouble. I'm not scared of shoulder. But for whatever reason, I decided, you know what? I'm going long. It's like he's broadside, maybe quartering to me slightly, like I'm good to go. Well, I shot him basically middle, dead center. I mean, as dead center as you get, and then this was a liver shot. Let him lay all night, called in a dog just because it had rained that night. My dog does track deer. I don't have a lot of confidence in him, but he's found deer, and I think he would have been able to find this one, but he'd had knee surgery. So I called in a guy, and his dog took 60 yards from where I'd last seen it, and there it was laying in the first bed. So we ended up able to find him, and all was well. But yeah, it was just another one of those things where coming to the water hole in the middle of the day, this is the last 3 bucks I've shot in the last 2 years have all been on water holes.
Crazy. That speaks for itself right there. And they're not, some slammer deer too. These are really, really nice deer, and mature deer as well. So that's,
I actually just got my teeth. I've been doing the aging back, and I actually just today I've been waiting to see this buck I shot this year. Yeah, because I hadn't seen this deer. I had no history of the buck Mega that I shot, and I had no history of him. And the year before, and I was like, man, I feel like this could be an old deer, and he ended up being 5 years old. So which it was, great mature buck. But I didn't know how old he was, so it's really cool to put him through that. Yeah, and that I learned it. I think you had. You're on this podcast, and that's how I learned it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So. Heather, they do a really awesome job. I still need to send. I have a deadhead I want to send in, and then I have the deer I shot this year that I want to send off, and it's in my freezer right now. I know they said you don't have to do that, but I'm still skeptical. So anyhow, that's great. That's awesome. And then you kind of alluded to a half-acre food plot versus a water hole. You would go water hole. Where does that threshold start to, maybe I'd rather have the food plot, but you're killing all your deer on water holes.
Yeah. I think I have both regardless. Adding a water hole is simple.
But effective.
Yeah. And so some other things with that too, right? And so we have a skid steer that we have opportunity to use. And makes digging it in super easy. I mean, I dug it in and filled it within an hour with water. So it takes longer to fill the tank up with water and take down there than it does anything. But so that's great. You have a skid steer, you can dig it in. It's super simple. You have to worry about tree roots or rocks or anything like that. That makes it easy. We also have a set of pallet forks in an old chemical tank that we can fill up and fill those tanks up or fill the holes up with. If you don't have that, it's still, I mean, you get yourself a shovel and you can dig it in, right? So there's a plethora of things that you can use as a water hole. I got a cousin who used a kiddie pool, laid it on the ground, and his son shot his first bow buck ever. It was a 6-pointer. I think he shot his first bow buck ever, drinking out of this little kiddie pool water hole, or, sitting there right on the ground. So you can do it that way. I don't know what kind of data says a mature buck's going to come up and do something like that. I don't know about that so much, but you're still going to bring deer to you. So you don't necessarily have to dig it in, but I think if you want to be the most effective and natural way, you dig them in. You can use old, anything, any plastic tub that's going to hold up and not crack, because they're going to get into it. They're going to climb into it. But you can really use anything, right? And so all you need is a shovel. You can, I'm going to say that 80 gallons is probably the floor
threshold
of what you want to use. Otherwise,
and why is that? Because the intrusion, having to go in and fill it up all the time, just not lasting very long.
Right. Yep. And between evaporation, you're just going to fill up quite a bit, right? I've tried small things, and I've even put a 5-gallon bucket in a low spot, and like, sure, deer come and use it, but like it's dry, and if it's raining enough to keep that full, they're getting it everywhere else too, right? Sure. So it's just not being effective enough.
Yeah. The goal is to provide something they can't easily get when they need it.
Right. Yep. And so, there's a number of things you can use. Rubbermaid tubs. I mean, you got to make sure they're heavy duty, right? Old cattle tanks, right? Whether they're aluminum or whatever they are, right? You can dig those in the ground. Like, there's a lot of different things you can dig in. You just need a shovel and a way to dig it in. Some people let Mother Nature fill it up, and that's, you wait a year and you go through a winter and spring, and sure, it's going to fill it up. I'm more impatient than that. I'm going to fill it up after I dig it in.
Water.
Yeah, but a lot of guys are using coolers, right? If they're in a spot where it's tough to get to, you can lug in a cooler to get at least filled up to start. But you can really use whatever you want from that aspect of it. And there's people that sell them. I end up buying some that have like this dirt infused in the fiberglass.
I got one of those like 4 years ago. When we were going on the trade show circuit in like 2017. I ran into those guys, and I got the small one. And I put it in there, and that was my first experience ever with a water hole. And my dad kind of looked at me funny, like, and it was a property that had a water source, and I was like, I don't know, I'll try it out. And sure enough, same thing you're saying. But yeah, I know it's called the earth pond, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's an earth pond. And so you got the small one. It's probably like 50 gallons or something like that.
Yeah, it did get cracked, unfortunately. But
it did. Okay, I haven't had any crack yet, but I think that was I haven't had any crack. People think that or ask that question a lot, and like I said, deer in them, like you'll have coons in them, you name it, they'll be inside there. And I haven't had any crack with even freezing and thawing, no issues. But I like those just from a standpoint that they look natural, right? They have like this dirt infused in them. You can dig them in. They don't even look like they're fiberglass ponds or like any type of, but you can use anything, right? We just like to have our property look as natural as possible. And, but yeah, so when it comes to how many in an area too, right? Like the more you put out there, the more you're going to dilute what you're trying to do, right? So if you got 20 acres, maybe it's probably only going to be one, right? We got 260 acres and I have 4 in, right? And I think that might be our cap right now, or it might be a little bit more, right? So anywhere between maybe, 300 to 500 yards apart is probably going to be effective for centralizing them to there. You get scattered all over the place. Well, now you're gonna, now you're just diluting what you're trying to do, and you're not gonna curb that movement much. Regardless if you have food plot areas, stuff like that. Yes, there's food plot has its own thing, and everybody thinks they have to have one, and people work their ass off to try to put in a quarter-acre food plot when
it's a ton of work. Your tractor's gonna break, something's gonna break in the meantime. You have to go back. It's a 3-weekend event half the time. And
you can dig one of these in and have. I think they will be more effective than that small food source, because that small food source they're gonna eat it within a
Pounded.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that you put in some greens there. We have those type in the area. And if it can be good during those few days, but if your wind's not right or you're working or whatever it may be, like it's cleaned out, it's gone.
Yeah.
Or this, you have all season long
And forever,
and
perpetuity.
yeah. And even in the wintertime, I'll see them come up and punch holes to drink in this water. So
Wow.
it's kind of crazy, but I've seen a small 6-pointer stomping his hoof on that to bust open a small hole that I don't even know how they get their mouth in to drink, and then seeing a doe come up 20 minutes later and drink out of that same hole. So like they're still, if everything else is froze over, they're still looking for water sources.
Mhm.
And I'll get them once in a while when everything's completely froze over and the snow on the ground. But when things are frozen up and solid, they're not.
Yeah.
They're just not utilizing the same.
Have you ever thought about using like a de-icer or a solar panel, like hooking a solar panel up to something that would keep it open?
Yeah. And we've talked about that. We've thrown it around. I don't know. I gotta think it's legal. I don't know what legality is there on like trying to keep it open or what source you have. But if you could do it, and if it's legal, I haven't looked in that part. But if you could do that, if you could if you have the means to have a solar panel and some battery hookups and find an aerator, I think late season it could be as good as standing beans that have been taped off all summer long and they're solid. It could be as good as I think it could be as good as a pile of corn laying there on the ground. Like I think having open water in an area like that where they don't have to go to a creek or river system and be vulnerable, I think that could be dynamite. So if somebody's got some ideas out there, let me know what you're doing on that.
Yeah.
But we just haven't put that
Reach out
together
to us.
yet.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was that when I was drafting some notes for this, that was one of the first things I thought. It's like, man, if it's effective, when it's really hot, imagine how effective it'd be when everything else is frozen over and you have
Yeah.
this above freezing water. So yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be very interesting. So I want to talk a little bit more about the access to getting to these stands in order to hunt them. So like, can you paint a picture? Is it like the edge of the farm where it's kind of on the edge of this? Explain where these are at or what people should know. I know access is important, but it's obviously
Yeah.
it's super important. It's hard to maybe understand what you can and can't get away from. And you have
Yeah.
experience with it.
We have 3, I think, are really good locations, and one that is not in a great location. The one that's not in a great location is on the edge of a food plot. It's probably 30 yards within the timber. So I'm walking in and out of the food plot all the time. Right. So you're defeating the purpose. That's really, I could go access it from the opposite direction, but then I'm blowing up bedding. I'm blowing up ridge systems and so like we still get a lot of deer utilizing that before they go to the food source. And that's where I got busted going up the tree one time. So you can do it, but again, I just blowing up an area because after they're getting that drink of water, not always, but most of the time they're going out there to feed in those plots. So that's on. The rest of these are all on edges of the property or near edge of property lines. And I think that has to do more so of our access and our trail system going in. And that's kind of how we have laid it out is we utilize our property. A lot of people, right, they're not going to not a lot, but some people are not going to set foot in their deer hunting area, right? They're not going to go in there. We utilize ours year round, hiking, 4-wheel rides through there, right? Tractor rides. We're down there with mowers, and it's been this way for 40 years. It's been the family. It's always been this way. So they're used to that activity. And I heard on a Wired to Hunt podcast with Mark when he went to Wisconsin with was it Tom in Verbo or in up there in Wisconsin. He went up there.
Doug Durden was a guy too, I think, up there too. I don't know
yes, it wasn't Doug, but it was anyways, he was up there and the guy, he said something similar. That's a great podcast to listen to when Mark went on his Wisconsin hunt. And when he described what happened there, that guy, I would say our property is similar to that, where we're utilizing a lot. We're driving through it. We're checking cameras. I'm checking my cameras with my dog. So they have a little bit of level of intrusion. Now I say that, but I'm not just like super lax. I'm still staying out of there, but when I do it, I'm not like wearing rubber boots. I'm not spraying down everything afterwards. I'm not trying to do it at certain times of the day or any of that stuff. So we have a lot of trails through there, and we use those to access the property, right? So they're used to people being on those trails. They're used to 4 wheels and stuff going down them. So that's what we're using to travel by foot. And I have stands that aren't too far off of those trails, right? Where deer are already traveling through. They're already at points they're traveling through. And I have a way to get to my stand where my wind's going to blow back towards the trail, or they're going to go, deer aren't going to is where I'm walking as much. And that's another thing I've done with these water holes is set them up for multiple winds. So I have a different water hole that I can hunt for each wind, right? Because all of a sudden, our holes used to be set up for a northerly, a predominant
Guess when it's hot
wind.
out, when it's hot and warm, it's probably going to be a south wind, huh?
Yeah. So there was a couple of years ago where it was like a 10-day, I think in 2020, it was a 10-day run of just straight south winds.
Yep.
And so then you're pushing your limits on where you're trying to set up in different areas. So now I just set these holes up to where I have, all right, this one's best for this wind, and this hole's best for this wind, right? So we have these different options. So that's why a lot of that thought goes into it. And when you're trying to position it just right, I'll even make sure I have a good tree or good hide. So the last one I put in, I knew the area I wanted it to be in, and I picked the perfect tree. And I set the tree stand first so that I could have a sitting, shooting spot right at the hole. Because I know they're going to come to the hole. If it's in a 60-yard area, wherever I put the hole, they're going to come to it regardless. Right. So now I'm just setting up how I'm getting into the stand. How am I getting out of the stand? Where's my wind going to blow? How can this, every tree is a little different on how that stand can quite set in there correctly so that everything's perfect. And then I'll put the water hole in. When I first got into hunting too, that was always a tough one. It's like, how do you access, right? Or what? How do I get to?
I always feel like people over exaggerate it. Like, oh yeah, I can get away with that. And when I think that, it never ends well. Like when you really do try to stay true to being smart with your access, it does seem to definitely help. But I think everyone's had that battle.
Yeah, and I've learned the hard way a couple times too, and I've gotten rewarded a couple times by sometimes taking that access is taking the long way, taking an extra 10-minute walk when it's easier to take this, go the other route. Then busted by, there's a few deer that I've had plenty of deer go over my ground set and not bother them. Well, I've had a deer at a trot slam on his brakes at ground set, and stop right there. So it's your best if you set it up ahead of time and you plan it in and out. And don't get me wrong, you're never going to get 100% right. And you're going to have that big buck do something he should never do. That happens. And you may get busted, but you just got to kind of play the percentages and where do you think they're going to come from and what's your best odds to not be seen walking in, and maybe that's not the best way to put it either, but because, you can get in and out of a lot of spots too that I hear on podcasts where some people make it seem like you have to be walking in with moccasins on and you have to have a switchgrass fence on either side of you for not being, but deer's hearing is no different than ours. And like they're used to other animals walking through the woods. And so like, as long as you're not slamming your bow up against your aluminum tree stand and there's not a weird sound like that,
ripping your scent right where you think they're at.
Right. So I just, take that with a grain of salt too, I guess, but.
So waterhole and cell camera, most powerful duo in your opinion?
Oh yeah. And so a couple things with that. Yes. That, and then you better have a solar panel too, right? Cause you're going to have thousands of pictures. I tried not doing it and I went and bought a solar panel last summer for every single camera, all my colors. I was going in, changing cameras, so batteries out. And that's
have you looked at the prices of lithiums right now too?
I haven't yet.
Oh boy, they're pretty high. I'm gonna look on Amazon right now. I bet you they're probably close to $20 for 8 of them.
Wow. Yeah. I would. Yeah. It's you're constantly changing them over because it's a cell camera, and then you're getting pictures all the time of everything. What'd you find?
Okay, I exaggerated. I think. All right, now that's on subscription. I don't want subscription. Amazon is $15. Okay. And then I saw I think it was Kevin from the Deer Hunter podcast posted they're like $19 or $20 at Walmart for a pack of 8. So
but you're ripping through those things. I'm talking thousands of photos that you're going to get there. I'm up in my Scout Tech plan because I'm getting photos. So and that's the other thing too, is then all of a sudden you have all these coons that are coming over there. Nobody's trapping coons anymore. So I start taking up trapping after I got done hunting, trying to trap some of these coons, and I've had a couple shots on them. I've gotten a couple with my bow with them coming to drink the water hole. But what else I found is those darn things are climbing the trees if something's coming in or whatever, and they're messing with my cameras.
Yep.
So I've had to put screw-in mounts in, and or they'll pull the cable out of my camera from my solar panel.
Yeah.
So they'll be somehow, I don't even know how they do it or what they do, but those pesky little things, you get them face to face with your camera,
and then all of a sudden it's radio silence.
Yeah. And you're like, gosh. So that was actually more trouble. I had the most trouble with that this last summer, where the coons messing with my cameras than anything, or bending the antenna. So yeah, so you got to kind of get a location or a tree where they're not going to be using it. You got to think about that level too. But no doubt about it, a cell cam, a water hole, dynamite. I mean, there was
just get the Render SP18 bundle, hard plug right here.
Exactly. I mean, for sure. But and Boone and Crockett and the Pope, they got their own thoughts, and you guys have gone down that ethical road. But I've been. This hasn't worked out for me like this, but I thought it was at one time. I was walking to another stand, and boom, the buck I was after popped up on this water hole. Well, I'm like, I have a stand that's near there. I'm going to sneak in, right, and hopefully get a shot at him. So I'm taking my boots off and I'm creeping in, and I'm climbing up. It didn't work out, but so what people think, like, hey, you're just going to get that picture in the water hole and you're just going to go off and shoot it. I haven't found that yet. Yeah. I haven't been able to do something like that, but it does give you immediate intel and tell you that. But I think, so when I shot that buck, the mega buck that I was talking about, I didn't have a cell cam on that water hole because I didn't think he was there utilizing it all the time. I had the cell cam in an area where he was coming in and out of bedding. I went back and checked that camera, and he was all over it. Right. So that, in that case, it would have helped me having that. I could have went and sat that stand, knowing that he'd been there multiple times. But there's a lot of times too, where when you get that picture, it's too late. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, yes, it tells you there, but it doesn't help you kill you that minute. It might be the next day or further down the road. Yeah. But yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. You want inventory on bucks. You want to have a shot at a
bow
buck
range.
Within bow range. You get yourself a water hole. You get yourself a cell camera, and you're setting yourself up for a really good chance of getting a shot at that buck.
When is it too late for people to put in a water hole? I know it. It's summer right now. Is this a summer chore?
Definitely. I mean, the best time is now, but the worst time would be. I put that. I turn that around. The best time is going to be yesterday, right? Put it in whenever you get a chance, right? If I'm telling you, if you put it in August, the 2 weeks before season, they're still going to be there using it. Mm-hmm. Like I have hoof prints all the way around my hole after just being there a couple of days. They never knew it was there. I'd been in there doing all kinds of work. Right. They obviously weren't worried about that. And I didn't see any large tracks, but I think those will be coming. So best time is now. You can utilize some of these spring rains to keep it going. You get them used to it. So it's definitely sooner the better. But I'd say, anytime's a good time. If you can get it in there and you can make some time for it, it's going to be a good season for you.
Yeah, I think so. I think people discount the water hole because it sounds too easy and I don't know. It sounds gimmicky, but it's probably the last thing from a gimmick. Because last time I checked, all critters need water, and so why? So let's buy this gizmo or gadget or put in this special food plot or this special whatever. I mean, water is the basis of all life.
I bought, funny you say that, my dog's down here getting a drink right now, right? It's exactly as you say that. But I bought 10 of these water holes because I was like, I wanted some cheap shipping on them. And so they gave me this price. I should be able to sell them no problem, right? Like I just put them online or whatever. And I posted them on Facebook in one of these groups, and people were just hammering on their mosquito traps and everything. I'm just like, I couldn't believe, like you said, people think they're gimmicks.
The water hole slander.
And I'm just like, I'm telling you guys are missing out. And I still have 5 of them left. I haven't been able to get rid of, but and because I'm amazed that people aren't. Well, and maybe they're using other things.
Other methods.
Yeah, other methods, and maybe someone, and that's fine too. But
I doubt that. I mean,
it's something that it seems simple, like you said, and it really is. And everything you talk about gimmicks, I've been through all the gimmicks,
Yeah.
right? I was trying everything and figuring out what worked and the fake scents to make mock scrapes and this is the best thing and this is
Yep.
nose jammer and this scent and
Yeah.
that scent, right? And those to me are gimmicks, right? Those are the gimmicks. But honestly, I feel like I could sit my water holes, just only sit them all year long, and I could shoot a great buck every year during the rut. You take a week off, hunt the rut, and you just hunt water holes. And my 4 water holes, and I'm pretty sure I can shoot a good buck on one of those holes. Like it's
Well, you've not necessarily during the rut, but you've four of your last bucks, 3 of them been on water holes. So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
pretty
yep.
pretty obvious to me anyhow, looking at that. So I don't know, man. I'm all amped. I got 2 water holes in my brain where I need to put them. So I just need to go do it now.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think anybody that does it, you're not gonna be disappointed.
Yep.
You know, it's not as you're gonna put some work into it too. You're gonna have to dig it in. There's times where, you know, I'm going in filling them in the middle of the week. I put my kids down to bed and it's 10:30 at night, and I'm like, I need to go fill these up. And now I have the time to do it. I'm just filling them up, right? Like they can do it at any point in time. If it's during hunting season, right? You're using daylight time to hunt, so I'm going in the dark, filling up water holes. So like, how often you got to fill them up depends on the weather. Sometimes I don't fill them up. But other times,
Well,
like I
and your
said,
cell
when it's
camera
dry,
helps you monitor them as well.
exactly. Like that's last summer when it was so dry, I couldn't believe how much water was being taken out of that. So there might be some of that involved, right? If you leave it empty for a long time, it's not going to help you. But and you can, but I think you can burn out a water hole just like you can anything else. So you still got to be smart about it. I don't care what it is. There's no easy way to shoot a good deer. But if there is something that's going to help you, I think
Amplify a
this.
spot.
Yeah, I think this is it. And if you're in a state that you can't bait, this is better than a bait pile.
Illinois.
And Illinois is a great example of that. To me, this is better than a bait pile because it's natural. If you can make it look natural, they just think it's a hole in the ground that keeps having water in it. It's not a pile of corn in the middle of the woods. This is water that, you know, that they're used to seeing other places that naturally occurs everywhere. So
I couldn't agree more. And I think that you hit some really important things that people should know before things get too late to put in a water hole. Anything else here that you want to cover? I mean, you're the water hole guy now. Like this is what you do well.
I do enjoy talking about it and doing it, and I'd be willing to tell anybody about it. But there's some great Jeff Sturgis has some amazing videos on YouTube. You go watch that. He's got some great examples of where to put them, how to put them in. I mean, he's got
to be one of the pioneers of the water hole as well. He just posted one this week. I watched it. And it was like another refresher, and he's putting in some like similar to like the size of the fish ponds. I bet 250 gallon water holes, big.
Yep.
Very big.
Yeah, and I think he was saying that he found those 300. I watched the same video, Jake, and it was like 300-gallon Rubbermaid heavy duty tubs, like almost like troughs that like cattle would be drinking out of or something. And he said they're only like $270 or something like that. So I didn't think that was too bad if for 300-gallon
to hiring someone to bring in a tractor or having equipment to put in a food plot or the seed or the or have you bought a 2.5 gallon of glyphosate this year? I mean, like everything's expensive right now. So it's like,
you're right. Because we spend all that money on food plus seed. And I'm actually thinking to myself, like, do I even need to do food plots anymore? Right. Like I don't, there's a ton of work in them. There's a ton of money, right? Like the reason I have them is more so I want to just keep deer in the area late season, not hunt over them. I just want to try to attract deer more later in the season. But so, it's, he's a great resource. So Jeff's got some great videos out there. There's other guys that do it as well, that you can learn from online. But
have you ever tried? I know Analogics made like a Waterade. I'm gonna call it like Gatorade for deer or something. Did you ever try that or research?
No, I've never tried it, and I don't even know. Like, so if you're in a state that can bait, it's probably good. But I don't know how, like in the state of Illinois, how that goes towards baiting. I don't know, but it's basically like a Kool-Aid. Yeah. But I've heard Jeff say that on his videos and stuff that like it doesn't do you any better. And so, I mean, I don't know. Does it make it sweeter? Sure, but I don't know.
Water.
Yeah. I don't know. If I set a bowl of water and lemonade in front of my dog, he's probably going to pick the lemonade. So I don't know, maybe it would work for deer, but I don't know. Someone have to try it out and test it out, because I don't think it's legal in the state of Illinois.
True. Yeah. You need to call your conservation officer. You have to ask about the de-icer, and you need to ask if you can add some liquid IV during the run to keep deer hydrated. So awesome. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time, Grant. And I'm like I said, I encourage everyone to I challenge everyone to put a water hole in this year if they have the chance to do it and monitor it. And I think the proof will be in the pudding. But if people want to find you, what is some of the best places to find you?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. It's called Triple Threat Retriever. But to be honest, Jake, I'm like getting out of the social media world, I think.
Going 0 dark 30.
I started a brand when Instagram was easy to start a brand and it was hot, and I was selling shirts and hats, and then all of a sudden they changed their to advertising, right? They wanted you to pay to get, and my views went from like 17,000 to like 1,000 overnight, right, on photos. So I was like, so that stopped that. So then I started really working on the outdoor side of it. And then I felt like in the last couple of years, it was almost like a shadow ban for having outdoor stuff. I just saw, again, traffic dive down. I saw just not as much going on there. And it just, so that kind of deterred it. And then just everything that's happening in the world with current events and everyone having opinions, like I found that it was just better to not be involved in all that. Yeah, just to be away from it. And so it's up there. I'm on there, and I keep it because I think there's really good tools and stuff that you can reach out to people and you can find out information. But I deleted the apps off my phone, and it cut my face or my screen time in half daily. Like I feel like a changed man after getting rid of that stuff. It feels good.
So you deleted like basically the apps, and you check what only on your computer?
Sure. Yeah, I can go like on the website, but using the website on your phone is such a pain that I don't want to do it. The app's so much easier. So I just don't do it. Right. It kind of forces me not to want to use it. I got other things I need to wasting or doing with my time, or use this to learn. And so I've watched more videos or listen to books on tape, or just try to take stuff in that way rather than getting caught into some stupid reel about something I don't really care about laying on the couch, so.
For sure.
So there's my rant on
good advice in
media world.
Well, someone will send you a homing pigeon to North Central Illinois.
Yeah. I might be, but I still love podcasts and listening and consuming all the media and YouTube channels, but just the social media thing, I think I might be done with it. We'll see. I don't know. I used to have a desire to put all kinds of stuff in there, but now I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm getting older. I don't know, but
I catch myself too a lot of times. Like, man, different day, different conversation. But certainly always enjoyed these conversations. It's so awesome to talk to folks like you. Been a longtime customer and supporter and involved with the Exodus brand. So I just want to say thank you for that. And that's really awesome. And hope to catch you at the Last Breath launch party in August 19th at the Adler.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And I just tell everybody this too about the cameras. 5-year warranty. If your camera's stolen, you have 50% back on your camera.
Yep.
I mean, nobody in the industry has that. They're bulletproof. I set them out all year long. So I did a lot of research before I got into your cameras, and I firm believer in them. And there's a reason you guys had your 7th year anniversary here. And I love your guys' product, and appreciate you having me on here to talk about deer.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again. We'll have to do a recap after you kill 2 more giant bucks on water holes.
Yeah, hopefully that's the case. Well, I did send a message to everybody when I put that last hole up, water hole. I said, it's a future booner kill site, boys. So if it's not me, hopefully it's my son or daughter or buddy that does it. So
I believe it. I bet it'll happen.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that at some point in time it'll happen too. So
love it. Well, put out your water holes. Have to catch up again here, Grant. Really appreciate it.
Yep. All right. Good talking to you.